Hi everyone, it's Mike here. Now, a few weeks ago, I was talking with my friend Linda Simpson, and we kind of come up with the idea of creating an art project that included lots of rust and lots of texture, but incorporating tools that possibly have been neglected. We decided to create an art project called Neglected Tools of the Trade, where we would pick up some old tools that we haven't used or have been left in our bottom of our drawers, actually turn them into a piece of art. So that's what today's project is. You can see what Linda's created. I've included the link to her YouTube channel in the description area below this video. But first of all, I'm going to show you what I've created on that theme of neglected tools of the trade, and then I'll join with you again at the end. The first part of my project is going to be with this 8.5 by 10.5 polyresin frame that I'm going to completely cover in black gesso. Now I've removed the glass from the frame, and I've also removed the inside mount that came with the frame too. So all I'm left with is the backing piece and the actual frame itself. Now this is one of those frames that stands up on its own with a stand at the back. It's not one of those that you hang on a wall, it's just a freestanding one. So I'm going to completely cover everything, including the sides and round the back, with the black gesso. You can just see me painting the sides here. Now, as this is one of those processes that takes a long time to do and it's very, very boring to watch, I'm just going to show you a little bit of it, then I'm going to jump to the end where I've already painted the entire thing. Like so. This is what we call video magic. So this is a rusty texture paste. It's a reddish, orangish kind of paint with texture, almost like a sandy, gritty texture inside. And this is from Viva Decor. So I'm going to completely cover the entire frame in this. Now it will take more than one coat. So you'll see me doing a portion of it. And once again, I'll jump to the end where the entire frame has not only been done with one coat, but actually with two. So I'm just putting the finishing touches to the second coat of that rusty texture paint, and I'll just hold it up to the camera in a little while to show you exactly what it looks like. And because it's an acrylic kind of coating, then it does dry pretty quickly, but I'm just going to give it a quick blast with a heat gun and then show you what it looks like once it's dry. So I'm going to put this frame to one side now and work on the inside of the frame, the main picture part of the frame. So I have a piece of black mount board, and I've got some various found and decorative items from my stash. These are some chip flourishes, and I've also got some nuts and bolts and washers, some mini hinges and other little metallic things that I think would look really good in the background of this page. Well, not page, this project. So I'm just going to stick these down, the flourishes down, with PVA glue. And it doesn't matter whether I get the glue on the background, because it's all going to get painted over anyway. You're not actually going to see any of the item, the main colour or the ordinary colour of the items. So I'm going to stick all these items down. I've already kind of placed them out so I know exactly where they're going to go. So I have the items that you can see in the top left-hand corner, and the other items in the bottom right-hand corner. And I'm going to cluster those in those positions on the mount board. So those are the two wooden chip items stuck down with that PVA glue. Now obviously the metal items are going to be too heavy to stick down with PVA, so I'm using the super thick gel medium, or Slap It On, from Indigo Blue. Now all the other metal objects, I'm going to butter the back with the super thick Slap It On. So I'm just cleaning off the spatula there. I'm just going to grab some of the decorative items now and start buttering the backs, and then I'm going to stick those down onto the back main board. Now you can just about make out that there is a pencil line all the way around, so I know to leave a border where it's going to sit inside the frame. So I'm not going to be placing any of the items so that they're going to disappear from the frame. Everything will be visible from the inside when it's all complete. So again, sticking down these items is kind of a laborious process and not very interesting to watch. So I'll show you doing the first couple of bits and pieces, and then I'll jump to where I've got everything stuck down, like so. So I'm just adding a few other little decorative pieces that I found. So some little wooden cogs and some smaller nuts and bolts that I can stick down just to add a little bit more interest into the background. So once everything's stuck down in place, I'm just going to clean off the spatula and clean my fingers, because I always get it everywhere. And then I'm just going to bring out my heat gun and I'm just going to give it a gentle heat just to kick-start the drying process on that super thick gel medium. If you just gently heat it, obviously the metal items are going to warm up and it's going to help set the glue so that it doesn't have to completely finish drying before you start to paint it. Now I'm going to cover everything on that back piece with black gesso. So once again, because it's a long and laborious process and it took me quite some time to do it, I'm going to show you a little bit and then I'm going to jump to the end. But you can also see I've got 3 small, what we call spanners, you Americans may call them wrenches, that I'm also going to cover in gesso in a little while. So here's where I've completely finished painting the entire back piece with that black gesso. So I'm going to grab my heat gun and make sure that everything is nice and dry before moving on. And then I'm going to put the back piece to one side and then start work on the 3 little wrenches that you can see there on my workspace. So as with the other stuff, it does take a little while to paint them all. So I've just jumped a little far ahead, but I've also found a large key that I also want to incorporate into the project too. So I'm also going to give that key a coating of the black gesso also. And again, I'm just going to give it a gentle warming with the heat gun to give it a helping hand towards drying. Now bear in mind, these are metal items, so they will get hot to the touch. So if you're going to do this, please do be careful. Don't try and pick them up straight away after heating them, because you will burn yourself. So I've left my items sit there for about 5 to 10 minutes just to cool down before I even attempt to pick them up and move them to one side and have a clean and tidy up. And the good thing about black gesso, once it's dry, it doesn't take a lot of elbow grease to remove it from your craft mat, particularly if you have a glass one. So now that my little tools and keys are dry, I've got some florist's copper wire, and I'm just going to take a few strands. It's very easy to bend, and I'm going to wrap around and tie the key and the largest wrench all together using some bands of this copper wire. And then the other 2 smaller spanners, I'm going to also wrap some of the copper wire around the the place where normally you'd hold it, so the hand grips on these spanners or wrenches. Now, if you're going to recreate this project or have a go at doing something similar, one of the things that you can do differently to what I've done is you can, if you wanted to, thread some beads or other little findings on the copper wire while you're wrapping it round, just to add a little bit more interest and a bit more texture onto those items. So I'm happy with the copper wire wrapped around those items now, so it's time to add them to my main project. So I'm going to bring back the main backing piece with my chipboards and my metal findings and little bits and pieces stuck down, and out comes the super thick slap it on again, and once more I'm going to butter the back of the little spanners and wrenches, and I'm going to place them down onto the main area, or in the middle, and with the largest one in the middle, like so. And I'm going to space the other two smaller ones at either side. Now, don't worry about squishing out the gel medium, because once it's dry it can be painted over, and I will paint over once it is dry. But you can also just take in a small brush, just go around and remove the excess beforehand if you want to, but I'm not particularly bothered, and I'm not particularly that OCD about it, so I'm going to be happy with just painting over with black gesso once it's dry. So now that my three main focal points are stuck down, I'm just going to give them gentle warming once again, just to get that gel medium activated and to start getting it to set to hold everything in place. You can just leave it for half an hour or so to let it air dry on its own, but if you're impatient like me, then the heat gun works wonders. So I've just brought back the black gesso, and now that it's dry enough to be painted over, I can go in there with a small brush and just cover over those bits where you can still see that gel medium. You don't really need to, it will go completely clear once it's dry anyway, but you can add the gesso on beforehand once the surface is dry. So now that the gesso is completely dry, I can bring back out that rusty texture paint, and then I'm going to completely cover the entire of this back piece with that rust effect. And once again, because nobody likes watching paint dry, I've shown you a portion of the coverage with that rust paint, and then I will jump to the point where I've almost completely covered, like so, and just adding the final touches and the final bits onto the back where I think it needs it a little bit more. I've let some of that black show through. I don't want to completely cover everything, just want to give it a little bit of depth and a little bit of texture so you can see that there are other colours in the background. But I'm just going over, just adding a bit more of that texture paste, or texture paint, the rust paint, where I think it needs it the most. So I think it's about this point where I decide that that is enough. I don't need to add any more. So I'll just show you a little bit of a close-up as to what it looks like. I'm very, very happy with that. And now I think it's time that I brought out some extra colour and then started adding the finishing touch to it. So my final coat is some peppermint tea acrylic paint from Indigo Blue, which I'm just going to put a little bit on a paper plate just to the side. I'm also going to bring out some of that metallic Kingfisher blue that I want to just mix in a little bit with that green of the peppermint tea, just to kind of give it a bit more of a verdigris colour effect. So I'm not going to mix a lot. I'm only going to pick up some very, very small amounts of that Kingfisher blue and then mix it in with the peppermint tea just to get the right kind of greeny, turquoisey, verdigris colour. And then I'm going to dry brush over all those elements on my main area of the picture. How much of this dry brushing effect that you add is entirely down to you. It's a personal thing. Some people only like to add a little bit. I like to add it in certain areas to pick out more of the detail. It's a purely personal thing, and it's one of those things that you get a feel for once you've done 2 or 3 projects of this kind. It's how to add, or how much of that dry brush effect to add to pick out the detail in the objects that you've stuck down. So I've gone over it 2 or 3 times, just adding as much as I think I want to add, and then now I think I've done enough. I'm not going to add any more. So it's time to add the same kind of detail and the same kind of dry brush effect over onto the frame. So once again, I will show you doing a portion of the actual frame, and then once I think you've seen enough, and I don't want to bore you to death, I'm going to jump to the point where I've finished and completed all 4 sides, like so. When you're creating videos like this, it's trying to find that fine balance between showing you as much detail on how I do the techniques and how I put these things together, and not making the video overly long by missing bits out. So I've tried to only cut out the bits where they're repetitive and kind of boring. So now the outer frame is complete, it's time for me to add my main focal picture into the frame itself. So I did measure it beforehand to make sure that everything would fit and that it would fit snugly. So I'm just adjusting it to fit into the frame, and then I will close it up. So now both pieces have been united. You get to see the full effect of the decorative inner and the frame too. Now, I thoroughly enjoyed making this mixed media piece. It's not really a picture, it's just a kind of decorative item. Now normally I would put something like this for sale on my website, but I don't want to. I like it so much, I want to keep it. So it's going to take pride of place in my craft room for the time being. I may change my mind later, who knows. So if you did enjoy it as much as I enjoy putting it together, please remember to give it a thumbs up, share the video with your friends, and if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, you can do so by clicking the button at the end of the video. Don't forget, this is a collaboration with Linda Simpson. Linda has created a Neglected Tools of the Trade project too, and I think what she's chosen is more in keeping with what she likes to make. So don't forget to pop across to Linda's channel and have a look to see what she's created. And the links to Linda's YouTube channel can be found in the description area below this video. That's all from me for now. I will see you all again real soon. Bye for now.